Captain Kirk, and you're listening to FBG Live.
You know, it's been weeks since I've been wanting to actually use this tune again. Yeah, I'm Steve O'Brien, and you're listening to the Digital Resistor here on, well, it's no longer on We Resistors Radio. It's just here on FBG Live. We Resistors Radio is a neat little place out on, Blog Talk Radio, and it has a lot of great and interesting hosts, and, I implore you to go out there and have a listen. Chuck Smith runs We Resistors Radio, and he's a fellow truth seeker. We worked with him last year until our equipment just went south, and I thought I got everything all worked, back together again. Hence comes this week. After weeks of, really good audio quality, it just went to pot. FBG Live Studios is kind of one of the projects I've been working on since, I guess, 2011, when I first found out that I could use my voice to actually influence the world and to reach out and, talk to people. I began trying to figure out how to increase my ability to communicate. And in doing that, I found myself looking and listening to a whole bunch of different people. I've been listening to a whole bunch of different people for a long time. But, well, I don't know. It might be different than you. We kind of equate things here at the Digital Resistor as being, awake and aware of the media's lies and misinterpretations of events. Different, thought processes. If you watch those media outlets like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever, they all seem to have their spin, and they're all kind of an orchestra rotating around themselves. Well, the alternate media, that would be, kind of what I talk about. I like to talk about the alternate media here on Digital Resistor, and you could probably include me in that genre. I sure ain't the traditional media. I have my own perspective on things, and a lot of times I like to focus on voices that are coming down from satellite networks. Now, internet networks are very important, don't get me wrong. As we talk about different talk shows and different media outlets and communication vendors, Blog Talk Radio, we talked about that for a millisecond right as we came in. That's a good venue if you want to start communicating to people. All you have to do is go over there. You don't need to get an account. It's free. Go ahead, make a show title, and boom, start talking. Next thing you got to do is actually listen to yourself. And, that takes a little bit more, because you got to learn to be lenient and also critical of how you talk, what you're saying, and how many ums that you do. How you pop at the microphone, pop, 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 pop. So I've been listening to all these alternate media things, and I decided that the only show that I really wanted to do is a show about all the shows. And so I've been watching the big picture, and I do the internet streams and Blog Talk Radio. That's great. They communicate, and they go out on different vectors and everything, but satellite radio. Satellite, for me, is particularly useful. Now, if you're on the internet, you might want to head over to fbglive.com. We're currently working on actually reselling some satellite equipment via our FBG Live homepage. From the day that, I'm doing this, my intention is to have something up within about 2 weeks. Now, a free-to-air satellite is a little bit different than what you're used to as far as Dish Network satellites and, other stuff like that, where you get the box for free. They might even come out and, install it for free and give you 6 months for free. But in the end, you're paying $60, $100, $150, $200 a month. For what? Oh, you can watch CNN and MSNBC and Fox, yeah, and then there's the History Channel that'll tell you stuff about, a killer predator shark that, well, they're not even sure it exists, but they're still telling a story on the History Channel. How is that right? Should the History Channel be, making stuff up? What about Vikings on the History Channel? Is that teaching? I don't know. I don't know at all. But the places on satellite I'm referring to would be coming down on Galaxy 19. That would be the land of, Mr. Satellite. And I haven't been able to bring him onto this show previously, but I think I can twist his arm and get him to make an appearance and tell you what he sees up on Galaxy 19. You see, it's got all sorts of channels, and I guess a handful or a dozen of them are actually in English. Well, that's kind of a plus, right? But the other ones are all in different, languages, and sometimes they have subtitles. But, Mr. Satellite was telling me that when he watches the satellite, because, he's disconnected from the internet, he's disconnected from everything. He doesn't do anything but satellite. So you sit there and you watch all these hundreds of channels of foreign people. You see our is in the American government representatives going over and making deals and saying strange things to people that you've never even heard of. And he goes, "Did you hear this happen?" I go, "What? Really? Yeah, Hillary just did it over here, or John Kerry, or Al Gore, or, they're all flying around the globe making little deals." The U.S. media, what they call the mainstream media or the corporate media, it's just not interesting. It's not a celebrity that just found her porn pictures posted all over the internet or something else with a good kick. That's what the mainstream media is about. Now, myself, this show, Digital Resistor, it's kind of about the individuals. Last season in 2014, when we were on We Resistors Radio, we talked to a variety of different guests. We talked to Jennifer Jones. We had a great conversation with Farron Shope. Farron was supposed to be on this show tonight, but at the last minute, I just found out that my output streaming server is just gone bonkers, just crazy. And the frustration level just hit such a high point. Here, being an independent broadcaster, and especially since my subject topic is all the other independent media outlets and the people that I believe are trying to share the truth, I need a little bit of, technical savvy because some of the networks out there on satellite, Galaxy 19, I don't know how they'd like me to talk about them and so forth, so I need to be able to communicate on the internet too, and maybe someday they'd be able to understand that, it's all open, man, and we should all be talking about, but some of them might be. So let's get into the radio real quick. Farron Shope, he's actually was supposed to be on talking about David Wayne Cox. Now, I'm sure you haven't heard of David Wayne Cox. It was kind of a subject that I didn't know anything about. Well, you got to know Farron to actually get the context of a David Wayne Cox. And I will get into that, but I really do need to get back into the basics of what has happened since 2014 in the satellite world. And I'm not talking about this Jade Helm thing that's going on all around us, but it's an incredible subject, right? How is it that everybody's talking about, Jade Helm? Is it important? Is it not? No, I'm talking about the news of the passing from satellite of the micro effect. Joe McNeil seems to have finally kicked the bucket. That's another one of those satellite channels. And Joe McNeil has been running the network for a long time. He's had equipment that has been failing him and a hard time getting guests to come on, not guests, hosts. And, technically it's just a lot of work to run a satellite network. You have to have phone lines coming in. You got to have internet going out. You got to have servers that do things. Even FBG Live, we run a skeleton ship, and we really should be running a little bit more. In fact, I need about 3 computers right now, but that's probably the consistent thing from last year. I was always saying I needed more computers, and guess what? We never got them. We got less computers, and we had to adapt. But the different computers, they do things. Like I was telling you about Spreaker and my outputting to Spreaker. As an independent voice, Spreaker is a very, very curious platform. If you're a broadcaster, look into it. Because if you sit there and output a stream into Spreaker, it allows you to cross-post into several different other formats. It's kind of one of my, what I like to usually call multicasting for a broadcaster. Instead of just talking to Spreaker, you go out and you talk to Spreaker, YouTube, SoundCloud, and I guess they can do Google Play, but who the hell's on a Google Play and what is a Google Play? Maybe I don't know anything about that. But RBN has been a fascinating subject, and, we were actually doing the micro effect, and it's a shame to mix the two up. They're two different animals. They have different running gear, different personalities behind them. But I guess I have to flash back to Republic Broadcasting Network. A few months ago, one of the biggest shocks came to us in the, alternate media. RBN, Republic Broadcasting, that's out of Round Rock, Texas. If you got a search engine, definitely type in Republic Broadcasting, or you can go to republicbroadcasting.org. Now, this is a landmark station, right? And, okay, I know I'm going in rabbit trails, but I got to assure you, I do come back around and I get to my point. Republic Broadcasting started in the mid-90s, and it started as this thing called Republic International, and they were transmitting up to, I don't know what it was, which satellite they were going to. That's curious. It was a C-band thing. I've had people tell me that story previously, and it went on, and flip and flop and turned into this other place called Genesis Communications. It was rebranded, and the guy that owns Republic Broadcasting, John Stapmiller, had to restart and start his own network. So he starts with Republic International. It gets away from him. Don't know how that worked out. Gonna have to get that from Stapmiller directly, because too much indirect communication is just totally wrong, and I don't want to go there. So Republic technically has been going on for, late 90s, mid 90s, crazy long. And a couple of months ago it went dark, and it wasn't coming back. And we looked up to the satellite with our, satellite dishy things and tried to tune it in, and all you heard was nothing. Well, Republic Broadcasting, they're in trouble. They have failing hardware. They have monetary situations. They had some theft of financing. They had some, poisoning of advertisers. When you have somebody dealing with your advertisers that's not being forthright, you can tend to lose support. John Stapmiller and Republic Broadcasting went so far in 2011, 2012, I mixed my numbers up, I believe it was 2012, as to open up a second stream. So he had 2 separate channels. I'm going, yeah, go RBN. That's really strong. Well, that didn't last too long. The overhead was too high, and he managed to get a whole bunch of interesting folks on the radio during that time in 2012. But coming forward, money's getting tighter, and I guess donations aren't coming in as they would before. So Republic Broadcasting went dark. Now, you try to find something interesting on satellite radio when everything starts disappearing. It's rather curious. And I guess it's a precursor to what they just passed. Since 2014, when we were last on the air, they've passed the what do they call that damn thing? Net neutrality bill. Now, the net neutrality bill is just like 400 and some odd pages of completely circular logic threads on how they're going to manage something, and nobody really has come with a definitive, this is what it is, because it's vague. And, well, quite honestly, folks, if they wanted to take down the internet, they just do it. But I guess you could probably say that this net neutrality thing is it's a marker that they can point at and say, well, Steve O'Brien, FBG Live, they don't believe this, and they'll shut me off. Say that I'm a hate speecher or something like that. Oh, got it. Okay, check this one out. Yesterday, there's a website called Reddit, reddit.com. Now, Reddit we could talk a lot about Reddit, but Reddit.com floated a thing to the front page. I guess they call it going viral. All it means is it got like a couple thousand people liking it and commenting on it, so it goes to the front of their page. So what is this big thing? It says, so what would happen if the U.S. government admitted its complicity in 9/11? And I go, okay, well, that's a meme that's been coming around and coming around. So we got September 11th, 2001. They love to call that date 9/11. And somehow on the front page of Reddit, it comes up, and, they're saying, well, what would happen if they did? And everybody went in there and commented, how everybody would take it and all this other stuff. And, it was quite silly, right? But the truth of the matter is more and more people understand what Building 7 is and Building 11 is, right? I'm sorry, not 11. Building 1, Building 2, and Building 7. That's really the argument around it, besides if you want to talk about the Pentagon. You can talk so many things on 9/11. The moment you, me, another one of your crazy uncles goes into a Thanksgiving's Day event and starts telling them all about 9/11, well, it's all over, right? It's a slow time bomb. Maybe they don't pay attention, but they pay attention the next time. Maybe the next person. Well, maybe the next person. Then all of a sudden they find a person that they're actually going to go, well, hey, I think I know a little bit about it. And it is curious that two planes crashed into, well, Building 1 and Building 2 and Building 7 fell. What? Yeah, a plane crashed into Building 1 and Building 2 and Building 7 fell. You go, well, how did it fall? And, you can go there on your own. I'm not here to do, September 11th stuff. You go to thealternatemedia.com. That's Farron Shope's website. We'll be talking a lot about Farron tonight. Mainly because of his friend. Friends are very important in our lives. I was made keenly aware of that today. You see, I was out walking around, and my business is kind of boom and bust. So all of a sudden, I'm like, I got a lot of customers, and I got to work really hard, and then I've got none. What do you do when you have none? In my world, I go knock on doors and say, hi, I'm Steve O'Brien, and, well, I fix computers, and do you have any computers you need fixing? We talk and stuff like that, and this morning I was in a particularly worrisome mood, should I say. And as I walked down the street, I noticed that, I didn't have a smile on my face, and that really got me. And so what do you do when because, your body's, talking to people, if you're not happy, they ain't going with anything. So I went ahead and I made a smile. I put my teeth together. There you go, lips up. Oh, man. Man, that's pushing it. And I tried that for a little bit, and I realized that I was in a world of hurt if I approached people doing cold calls. But I noticed a person turn the corner, and I go, hey, that kind of looks like my friend. And wow, wouldn't it be nice to bump into them, because I could really use a smile, and they're really cool. And well, it wasn't them, but around the corner came my buddy, and hey, how you doing? I'm like, well, I'm doing, kind of on a downturn here, and I thought I was going to bump into you, and I told her the story about seeing the other person and so forth. And anyways, we chatted about how life was life, and we just got to keep moving forward. Friends are very important that way. And Farron Shope was coming on tonight to talk about a man named David Wayne Cox. Now, David Wayne Cox is very important in the story of this world today. For one reason, I'm here on the radio, and I'm here on the radio because of men like Farron Shope. Now, David Wayne Cox, from what I understand, the only reason I know about this is because I ask questions. I go over to Farron Shope's website because he talks about stuff. Very interesting stuff. He's a person looking for truth, and the truth in everything. I go to the site, and what hits me on the front is this site is dedicated to the life and memory of my best friend, David Wayne Cox. I go, man, yeah, I want to know that story. So I emailed him. I said, hey, you want to do an interview? And I'd love to have you. And, well, of course, everything just completely fell apart. We lost a mixer, we lost a PC, we lost this, and we ended up leaving We Resistors Radio because we could not fulfill our end of the agreement, which was that we would be broadcasting weekly at a particular time and so forth. And it was all good. But I felt bad because I couldn't find or dig into this story, and I still have a lot of questions for this story. I'm going to work to get, Farron to come back on, but I'm going to take this time to tell you a little bit about who this man was, this guy named David Wayne Cox. Because, he was a normal person from what I've learned so far. Farron and Dave were, they played music together. They ended up working together and understanding some of the crazy stuff. September 11th is one of those. I don't think that was one of the first stories that they actually ever delved into, David Wayne Cox and, Farron Shope. And I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of that one. But everything seemed to have come to a head from what I know. The September 11th thing back in 2001, kind of shifted everything. And that's when Farron and David, they just went crazy. And they had to, research all this different knowledge that's out there and nobody wants to talk about. The Federal Reserve, no, I know it's very passé to do Federal Reserve anymore because we all understand that, do we? I don't know. You can look it up yourself. A good place to start would be the alternativemedia.com. There's a lot of other places. You can go ahead and go to YouTube. I'm sure you know how to find information on the Federal Reserve if you want. There's also the Bilderberg meeting, right? So these guys, they're sitting there, and it's really hard, right? If you're into this alternate knowledge and nobody really cares around you, it's really fascinating when you find somebody else that's working on a different line, and then you work on these lines together. But, Farron and David went on, they studied all sorts of things. All the fun stuff, the Apocrypha, Aleister Crowley, right? Crazy stuff. And, okay, I'm not going to tell too much more about it because I still want the story told completely and correctly and succinctly. But this guy, David Wayne Cox, right, a friend of a friend, he was killed. And it was a tragic, tragic death. because he was driving home one day and he was crossing an intersection, and a cop in the wrong lane driving like 100 miles an hour hits him in the driver's door and kills him. Afterwards, they go ahead and decide to say, well, I was chasing a motorcycle, but, yeah, that could never be proved out. And I guess we'll deal with that. What would you do if your friend was killed by a cop doing 100 miles an hour in the wrong lane for fun? Well, I know what Farron did, and it's probably a lot like any other person would do. And Farron's a station owner, and he got on the horn and he clicked the mic and keyed up, and he said, "Hey, here are the facts of the issue." And he got on the radio, and he had an AM radio. Isn't that nice when you could communicate to the whole town, to multiple counties? It's kind of, well, I bet you it's intimidating for the police to actually go through that kind of thing, where they know that their local paper is going to print every single word that they say, and they can get the city papers, and they can get a few other people to talk about the condition. And they took David Wayne Cox and they said that, well, he was a drunk driver and it was his fault. They couldn't actually, justify the fact that the cop was speeding in the wrong lane and David was doing nothing wrong. Substantiating his being drunk, that's another question in there, but I'm not getting into that. My point with David Wayne Cox is there's all sorts of people out there that support people like me. You might not think I'm anything, but I am here. I am talking. Everything will fall around me, and I'll still be talking somehow. Today I faced a moment where I just said, screw it. Just tear this stuff apart. Sell it. I need money right now. I need rent. Yeah, great. No, that ain't the way it works. So we just keep pushing together. But there are people that kind of like back us up. They don't talk on the radio. They study things. They tell us stuff. They matter to us. They make us smile. So I guess that's my point in talking about this person, David Wayne Cox. Did I blow him up into like some kind of super being? I'm sure he's fraught with how do we say this? We can say idiosyncrasies, we can say flaws, or we can use all sorts of other words to describe our friends and our family, all the same, but they're good people and we miss them, and it sucks to actually lose them in tragedy. Oh man. Broadcasting feels so good. I can't really let you know how important getting on the mic every week can be. Sometimes it can be frustrating when your world around you is really, staggering, and you spend all sorts of hours, going through facts and trying to figure out what you're going to talk about just to, entertain some folks, change the world. Well, I think talk does change the world. In fact, I do know talk changes the world. Back in 2011, I found a little show that I did on Podbean. It was a crazy little podcast website that I was able to put words into the mouth of the city council. And I found that curious. So as I did my podcast, and I would cast it into the tea party, and they'd share it around, and sometimes I'd go ahead and make up a show and just email the city council and watch the counters go. It's amazing. It's amazing. But you got to sit there and understand that every conversation that you get in can go that far. That's why I particularly focus on the digital resistor, on the people that are talking and the people that are talking behind the talking. Last year when we left, we lost a lot of people in the alternate media last year. We lose a lot of people. This is Stan Monteith, right? He was a radio host from GCN. Now, that's a talk show host that was around since the early 90s, maybe the 80s, talking about all that stuff, that Bilderberg, Federal Reserve, the alternate world behind the facade that we live in. That's good stuff. How were they aware of things for so long? My friend Mr. Radio, he was once talking to this guy named Mark Cornke. Mark Cornke is, it's Mr. Satellite, not Mr. Radio. Sorry. My bad. He was talking to Mark Cornke. Mark Cornke is another broadcaster out of the Micro Effect. And that you can get there at tmeradio.com. And I'm not too sure what the lineup is there. It's not on KU band at the time, and so we don't get access to it all that often. I guess I'm on the internet. I could be working something out, but it's difficult. Satellite radio is really important. But Mark Cornke tells Mr. Satellite, when Mr. Satellite, am I just botching this? I think I am. Mr. Satellite goes over to Mark Cornke and says, hey, man, he says, you know so much. You've been awake for so much longer than I have. And, Cornke goes back to him. He says, well, maybe you just didn't have all the pieces to put it all together. And you weren't really asleep. Maybe it is people aren't really asleep. That story came to me as I was heading out to pick up some cat food. These stories come at the strangest little times. And, I'm not usually a GCN listener, but sometimes shows come on and then I'm doing it. And Catherine Albright, and she's a broadcaster over at Genesis Communications, she started talking about the club cards and the evilness of, the supermarkets. And I go, Catherine, that's great. Thank you for talking about it. And she talks about sitting there going, why are you guys all getting club cards? In the 90s, there was supermarkets. And in California, there were Safeway, and there was, Lucky's, and there was another one. They'd sit there and raise the prices and lower the prices for people with a card. And I'm all, that ain't no deal. I don't want to, get a card to reduce the prices. Why don't you just sell it to me at the regular prices? And I had a lot of arguments in the 90s with tellers just because, why do you want me to get a card so you can give me a discount? Just give me a discount. And so I'd get a new card every single time I go in. And then they'd be all, do you have your card? And I'm all, why don't you give me a card? And they'd give me a card, and I wouldn't sign it, and I'd throw it away, and I'd get another card. Then I started using other people's phone numbers and my phone number and whatever. But I'd talk to other people about this, and I said, hey, they're collecting data on you? Well, so? They don't know who I am. They're all, well, you have that card, right? Yeah. You ever use a credit card? No. Well, yeah. Okay, so they know who you are, right? Well, yeah. Well, what does it matter? That's before I was what we can define as awake. Awake is a kind of strange state, right? And awake happened to me when a particular event, a guy and a gal, their name was Ed and Elena Brown, were under siege by the IRS out in New Hampshire. Now, they were sequestered in what was called a fortress, I don't remember, compound. And I think I would qualify it as a compound because it had, a big old crow's nest, and it had, the ability to defend itself, and it was defended, survivalist style, right? Here you go. But one night I found a alternate media channel called WTPRN, and it was a wonderful place in the universe, and it existed only for a short period of time, and then it went away. as do a lot of these things. And that's kind of a crime, but the people are still talking. I can still find them all over the place. But for me, when I woke up, was the night that I found out these two people existed, because felt I was keenly aware of the news of the world, right? I read the New York Times, I read the San Francisco papers, I read all sorts of, online newspapers. I'm informed. I wasn't informed enough to know that there was a hostage, or not a hostage, a standoff situation between the IRS and these two individuals that said something crazy like, well, show me the law. I got the money. I'll pay your taxes if you show me the law. Huh. No, they're not going to show you the law. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at all. No, they just try to outweight you, throw you in jail, and Ed Brown ended up being rounded up and thrown on a diesel, and then they give him the diesel treatment, or it's called something like that. It's where they stick you on a bus and drive you around for, well, months, years, till the end of time or whatever. I don't know all that. They have all sorts of interesting ways of stopping people from talking. But that was in the early days of alternate media. Alternate media was just getting going. Now we have it, crawling all over the place. I did want to talk a little bit about a broadcaster, and I know a lot of you folks that listen to this listen to a lot of the stuff that I do, and have strong feelings against and maybe for particular individuals. And they don't like some of them. Joyce Riley of the Power Hour is one of such individuals. You love her, you hate her. And, well, I understand that she's there, and she's done a lot of good for the world. She also finances the entire thing by sales of stuff. But is that bad? As we look at the networks out there, GCN, RBN, the micro effect, we can't look at the micro effect anymore. LRN, they all have to finance themselves. Now, Joyce's show on the Power Hour, it's different. It's a show that finances itself. It's a show, it's a creation, it's a company, it's a dang entity. It employs a lot of people. They sell stuff, they buy stuff, they do a sales pitch hour. Joyce Riley on GCN has one of the best news segments, well, usually does. It's unfortunate that Joyce Riley is not on the air lately. She's been dealing with cancer, and there's an interesting testimony there about a lady that talks about, all sorts of alternate treatments for cancer, and how she tried all these things, and they didn't work for her. Right, but there's conditions, right? Joyce Riley's claim to fame is going to be, vaccinations and, military vaccinations and all the crazy programs they put those people through. Joyce Riley's been covering that since the 90s, and her show, The Power Hour, has a huge, huge following. So what is sorry, guys. What does a radio host do that's been on since the 90s when they find out that you got cancer and you're going to feel really bad and you're going to have to treat it? Here's time to put up or shut up. Go eat your almonds ground up. Go eat this. Go eat that. In the end, is that going to help you? And then let's see. Can you eat crow and go do the chemotherapy or radiation treatment? I don't know. I don't know those answers. I can't tell you where I'd go when I would deal with that kind of stuff. I'm not her. But the Power Hour is there. Believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that they talk about is relative and good. Are they a gatekeeper? Okay, come on, man. I don't know. You don't either. Sorry, I'm throwing stuff around. But she's been gone, right? And there's a lot of people whose lives depend on Joyce Riley. it's kind of, well, they sell goods. They have a call center. They produce the show. There's board ops. And, that's a lot of livelihoods to be, hanging in the mix of one person. So not only do you have to get better, you got to figure out how to keep the ship afloat. Well, she's been keeping the ship afloat in a variety of different ways. Once she finally came out and said, hey, this is actually happening, she started manning the ship with a handful of individuals. I know she's pushing Jack Blood on Thursday, which was so interesting to have the Power Hour crew, be introduced to Jack Blood. And they got this guy named Ted Brower, which is kind of more in alignment with the Power Hour listenership. Because each one of these shows and their avid listeners are a little bit different than the other. So we got to kind of like take that into account. Who else they got? They got Gary Franchi. His voice has been coming on, since I heard him on WTPRN. He's gone and done a whole bunch of different stuff. Someday we'll talk to him and get his whole life story. It's kind of a crazy one, if I remember. But the Power Hour is, well, what's the word? In flux? Is she gonna make it? What happens to the Power Hour if she doesn't? I don't know. I hope she makes it. I don't want to lose any other people. I don't want to lose another Stan Monteith or an Officer Jack McLam. They actually meant something to me. They changed the world. So when you go telling me that Joyce Riley is XYZ, it might be, I don't know, man, but it's out there. The Power Hour stands on the cliff. Like RBN does. The Power Hour is just a show. What is Republic Broadcasting Network, RBN? Man, again, that's another company. That's a whole bunch of lives that are affected by, the decisions of one man, John Stadtmiller. So his decisions will be very important for the monetary income of, I think it's 7 board ops, plus a few people that do back-end stuff, plus, of course, John Stadtmiller, who has a house and he needs to pay the bills and this and that, and he has a hard time just keeping everything up and running. Now, I put a call in to John earlier today to get an update directly from him on everything that's going on, but I have yet to, get a call back from him. My phone's gone off twice since I've been on in the air, and that's probably my luck, and got Stadtmiller on the other line, and I'm sitting here talking on the radio. It happens that way. Everything happens like that. But RBN, is it going to make it? In this business, you don't stand down. You make corrections. Earlier today, when I lost my output streaming computer and it's just screwed up, it made me recalculate. What am I going to do? And I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it worked out. Definitely get it worked out. But it's going to take some time. And meanwhile, I'll just have to take the penalties. It would be nice to be on the Highfalutin network. I don't even know what that is, actually. Is that GCN? They got like the subsystem up on Galaxy 19. They got 5 streams coming down. Yeah, is that the major leagues? Because I've heard people that have left other satellite networks. I've heard, a lot of them have spoken on the same satellite networks. And I apologize for, all the new listeners. If you do not understand satellite radio, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to get Mr. Satellite on next week, and he's going to tell you a little bit of basics about KU band satellite and free-to-air and why it's important. Because these things, especially going forward in the digital era, it is very, very crucial that you know how to communicate. Now, that's not saying that they don't block the satellites and, the day that they point to this piece of paper that they call net neutrality and they go, hey, Steve should shut up. And they shut it down, right? Who else are they going to shut down? They don't want you talking about vaccines. That's we're done. The discussion's over. You can't have another opinion. Global WAPU, that whole thing, we're all getting warmer and Earth is doing this and, can't be a denier. You're a denier. Oh, man. Yeah, well, they've kind of lost that one, too. I'd say they have an easier time with that lie than the 9/11 lie. If my latest encounter with these guys, comes true, they're kind of, I don't know. Why is it that everybody that I talk to starts telling me 9/11 stuff without me even talking about it? Are they a bunch of moles? No, I totally don't believe that, right? I'm not that important. I just talk about people that talk. I talk about people that are important, and I've been thinking about a whole lineup. And I think a lot of different people are important communicators. It's good to listen to them. I can give you some stuff. I can just give you what I have gleaned from a lot of stuff. And if you're into broadcasting or actually just communicating better, this would be the show for you. In the past shows, we've gone over websites, and I wanted to go a little bit into some of the infrastructure stuff tonight. Steve, thank you for reminding me. I've reminded myself. Isn't that sweet of me? But we changed subsystems, and currently I'm not going to do that justice. And currently we're going out to Spreaker, and it seems like it's going to do okay. We'll give you an update maybe next week. I think I really want to try to get back to having guests, and I got to figure out a way around that. You need a separate system for every process, and taking incoming guests is a little bit tough for me. You're taking it in and then sending it out. You can't Skype in and Skype out at the same time. Routers don't like it. ISPs don't like it. It starts getting ugly. And I really don't like bad sound. I like really good sound. And do I want to talk about that? Let me think. No, I don't. I've said enough on that arena. Your communication is very important. What you communicate to who. God, that's very important. The fact that you do communicate and how you learn to communicate. I've been communicating to people all my crazy thoughts and notions, like I was saying, oh God, now I forget her name, Catherine Albright. She talks all supermarket stuff. It's great. I love her topics. Don't get me wrong. But me and her, we don't have a listening type relationship. I like what she has to say for the most part. But the supermarkets, you watch them take away interpersonal communications and train you to go into the auto aisles and put things in bags, right? They put your stuff in these temporary disposable bags that you get to buy nowadays. And it takes so much time. Where are they going with that? They've been pushing you into these recyclable bags. What does that mean? A longer term bag? It's not just a squishy, stupid little bag? I don't know. In any event, we're about at the end of the show, and I'm glad you joined me for the first show of 2015. I'm Steve OBrien, and, I'll be back next week. Take care.
us listen. Listen. FBG Live.